Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, where in today's video we're going to be starting our third new series of the week, that being My Hero Academia, The Dark Knight Returns, What If Deku Was Batman? As always, if you are new to the channel or if you are a fan of what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. So with this series, there have been many iterations of What If Deku Was Batman. Many of them usually play out the same way, but as you know with me, I'd like to add a little twist to my kind of storytelling. I like to take different elements that aren't particularly used and use them in a way to where my story can stand out and be unique all of its own. If you're wondering which version of Batman Deku will be, he will be the Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond version of Batman. Terry McGinnis will not be in this story. Deku will be instead taking his place. Also, while I'm not going to get into too much detail, one major thing I am going to state is that for this world in particular, the Batman mythos will be taking place in Japan, but it will only be the Batman mythos. I won't be using any other DC characters that are not associated with the Batman mythology. So no Supermans, Wonder Womans, Green Lanterns, Aquamans, anything of that nature. Also, as a little last prefecture, I am going to be avoiding the whole Bruce Wayne, Barbara Gordon, Batman, Batgirl romance. Yeah, that never happens in this universe. I don't like it in any version of the Batman story, and I'm not going to even bother including it. So, with that out of the way, let's get into today's video. As always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. The day and the night. Two things that go together hand in hand. When the sun rises, the moon falls, and vice versa. And in the hero community, you could say that there were two heroes who acted in this way. Their names, Almight and Batman. The two of them served in a similar role, but for much different reasons. All Might was the symbol of peace. He was bright. He was a beacon of which all should aspire to be. But for Batman, he served as the Dark Knight. He served as someone who loomed in the shadows. For the two, they were considered icons. Some even considered them mythological in their very being. But for Batman, in his time, his story is one that you all know. In the city of Gotham, one of the prime prefectures of Japan, there was a young boy by the name of Bruce Wayne, who tragically lost his parents due to the ever-growing crime and the violence of his day. This, however, did not deter him. It inspired him to become something more, to become something different, to be what this world needed him to be. With or without a quirk, it made no difference to him. Because of this, his story, well, it's one that you all know. The Batman came into prominence and took on the crime and the corruption of Gotham amongst the many other cities of Japan, from Kyoto to Tokyo to Sendo to Hokkaido, and so on. However, in the world of heroes, there were things that had to be done in a certain order. It started with a chance encounter when Batman was investigating a case, and he came into contact with him for the first time. Of course, All Might's original objective was to put an end to the criminals of Gotham, but to also bring in the Batman, as vigilantism was something that couldn't be tolerated. However, by the chance encounter between the two, they both came to learn much about one another. There was a deep, profound respect amongst the two, and after which, the two of them formed something greater than a mere friendship. It was because of All Might and his influence that the Hero Reservation Act was put into place. This was a special law. It was a law that allowed only certain classified higher-ups to know the identity of the hero. It was to an extent that you could count on one hand the amount of people who knew this person's identity. This was put into place for heroes who didn't want to operate so freely. You see, Bruce knew all too well that even if he had the best protection, his identity being outed would kind of take away from his role as being Batman. The Batman and Bruce Wayne could not be one and the same, if only for the sake of the hero working to its truest extent. No one feared Bruce Wayne, but everyone feared the Batman. And fear, whether Bruce would admit it or not, was probably his greatest ability for someone who was quirkless. Their bond began to grow to the point where Batman had even come to learn of the identity of All Might, Toshinori. With their identities now known to one another, the two worked in tandem. All Might, he took care of the bigger fish in the pond, those of whom could cause major damage in a lot of ways. However, those of the criminal underworld, they were left to the Batman, and this included criminals with quirks. Batman's influence was so strong that he was even able to bring down the mighty Yakuza, destroying it to its very foundation to the point where they could never recover, among many other villains that he faced along the way. However, time is something that waits for no one, and it was around 10 years ago that the Batman fought for what would be known publicly as the final time. Bruce had gotten up in years, but his mind had not slowed. It was 10 years ago he fought his final battle. At least, that was what the public was aware of. He battled against a known criminal, an assassin known as Deathstroke. However, this Deathstroke was not the one you've come to know. The original Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, he had long since died. In fact, it was the new Deathstroke before him. He was his murderer, the one who had taken his place and his mantle. The Batman and Deathstroke fought all throughout the night, but as the battle came to an end, in the midst of the damage that they had caused, it seemed as though Deathstroke had fallen to his impending doom, much to the horror of Batman. For the one who had donned the mask of Deathstroke was someone who had fallen to the darkness, someone that Bruce couldn't save. This fight took a toll on Bruce in more ways than one. It was so much to the point that he decided to retire. Of course, there was Nightwing and there was also Batgirl, but as they had gotten up in years as well, they too soon retired not too long after. Dick deciding to take more of a laid-back approach, deciding to become the new commissioner for the Gotham Prefecture, serving alongside Barbara. Tim had also gone into retirement not too long after. He had decided to take up the head founder of Wayne Tech, and he served in helping for building new inventions, new gadgets. Wayne Tech was a company that worked pretty much like any other type of hero support agency. helping to build support gear and things of that nature, trying to fight the good fight in other ways. However, as I've said before, the battle with Deathstroke was not Batman's final battle. No, his final battle would occur 5 years before the start of our story. And I believe we all know the fight that took place 5 years ago. It was a battle unlike any other. All Might was fighting against his eternal rival, All for One, wanting to provide his longtime friend much needed assistance. Bruce would don a specially made bat suit, highly powered and mechanized, one that could help turn the tide, if you will. Together, the two heroes were able to take the fight to All for One and seemingly defeat him. However, in the process, the two of them were damaged beyond repair. For All Might, he suffered his iconic left side injury, and as a result, it limited his hero work. But as for Bruce, he had done so much damage to his body in that fight that his retirement was now permanent. He wasn't going to be able to come out, even if he wanted to. At the very least, when he retired versus Deathstroke, he could at least always have the option, but now that option was taken away. If Bruce ever attempted to take up hero work seriously ever again, even with the advancement of technology to aid him, it would result in his death. Because of this, Bruce permanently stepped away from hero work. The Batcave, everything was shut down. And with that, Bruce, he instead decided to enjoy retirement, feeling as though his long fight for justice had come to an end. He did, however, have one person who would assist him, a hero in her own right, a former graduate of UA High. Her name was Carrie Kelly. Formerly known as Robin, she now went by a new code name, the Sparrow. Of course, she was one of the more lower heroes. After all, she was quirkless. But to her advantage though, she served in a way of more of a detective type of hero. After all, there were many different roles that heroes could fulfill. It wasn't all about just fighting and smashing city blocks. You had support heroes who did things like put out fires, or rescue heroes who specialized in helping with emergency services, rescue people from certain disasters. But then you had heroes who worked in the line of detective work, espionage. That was where Kelly and her line of work resided. She worked in the shadows, like her master and the ones that came before her. Serving with the GCPD, she would work in busting low-level criminals and things of that nature, occasionally have a fight with someone who had a quirk, but she never did anything that was too out there. Of course, while her hero name was known, it was something kept close to the vest, for her own protection, naturally. Our story begins 2 years before the events of the original My Hero Academia. It was on an evening. An older Bruce Wayne was sitting in a restaurant as he was joined by an old friend. Of course, if he had been in his true form, many people would have noticed who he really was. But he was instead a lot skinnier, a lot more paler, bags under his eyes. This is All Might, at least All Might when he's off duty. Going in his regular form will allow for him and Bruce to enjoy a peaceful dinner together, as the two were catching up. "Bruce, it's good to see you, my friend. Toshinori, it's been a while. How have you been doing?" Oh, I'm doing fine actually. Work has been, well, rather slow recently. That is to be expected. You have crime down so low, hardly anyone's coming out of the woodworks like they used to. Ain't that the truth? How's the treatment? Oh, the treatment's going well. I hardly feel any pain anymore like I used to. But still, at best, I can only do 4 hours a day. I see. I'm terribly sorry. I wish I could have done more for you. No, Bruce. What you've done has been perfectly fine. The fact that you were able to give me an extra hour of hero work, even in my condition, well, that's more than I can ever hope to repay. Truly, thank you. And how are Dick and Barbara doing? Oh, they're fine. They recently went on vacation. I hear that they've been thinking about retirement for a while now. I think it's good for them. A chance for them to move on and do something else. As for Tim, he's managing Wayne Tech just fine. In fact, he's always got something new to be made. I see. Have you visited the other two? I try to regularly. I make sure to keep the tombstones as clean as possible. I see. You know, I am sorry about what happened. If there had been, it's okay. I knew that there was darkness for some time. I tried my best to quell it, but ultimately, it seemed as though it took over. I don't know what to say. People praise me for being a hero, but in the end, if I had put as much effort as I did as being a hero into other parts of my life, maybe I wouldn't have lost them both. You know they would never hold it against you, Bruce. Maybe. But in the end, I guess we all meet our maker at some point, one way or another. But how about you? Have you thought about finding a successor? I have, actually. Although, with the way things are now, and where the world is, I don't really see a reason to look for anyone so soon. I'm actually thinking about taking a small trip myself to Island to meet with my friend David Shields and to see my lovely niece, Melissa. David, please give him my regards, Toshinori. I will. Ooh, hi, nice to see you, Kelly. Oh, hi, Toshinori. It's nice to see that you are doing well also. Is everything okay here? I know Bruce was going to be wanting to head home soon. Yes. I was not really feeling all that well. I was thinking about getting some rest early today. You shouldn't push yourself so hard, Bruce. You should enjoy your retirement. Oh, I plan to. And don't worry about the bill, I have it covered. Well anyway, I should best be getting off myself. Both Toshinori and Bruce would stand as they shook each other's hand. Bruce walking with his cane, and Carrie by his side. As the two of them made their way to their car, Kelly getting in the front seat. They were preparing to head out of the parking lot, when suddenly, a boy would come running past. Kelly was able to stop the brakes just in time, but the boy still tripped up a bit. His books were flying everywhere, a few of them landing on the windshield. Ow! Oh man. Hey kid, are you okay? Kelly would ask as she got out of the car. Bruce would exit as well. As he picked up a few of the books that had fallen, he had seen what was written inside. There were books about heroes, about quirks, about different attributes and things of that nature. They were well put together notes. They almost looked like they were the work of a professional, but you could still see the childish nature behind them. It seems you dropped these, young men. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't see where I was go. You're. Yes? You're. You're Bruce Wayne, the founder and owner of Wayne Enterprises. I get that a lot. And who are you? I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you, sir. Your technology and hero support, it's unparalleled. It's phenomenal. Why, thank you. I try my best to help heroes whenever I can. Are you alright? Yes, sir. I was just heading home. Would you care to have a ride? Really? Are you sure? Are you sure, sir? Carrie would say. Yes, it's no problem at all. In fact, I'd like to get to know this young man a bit more. Agreeing to his offer, Izuku would get inside of the car in the back seat with Bruce, as Carrie would begin to drive them to Izuku's home. As they made their way, Bruce would ask Izuku more about his books, and about how he was so obsessed with heroes. Izuku would explain his love for his heroes, and how he wished to be one himself. I see. You must have an amazing quirk then. Actually, Izuku would say, holding his head down. I don't have a quirk. You don't have a quirk? No, sir. I found out when I was younger that I was born quirkless. And even without a quirk, you still aspire to be a hero. Carrie would look into the back of the car through the rearview mirror, as she could see that look on Bruce's face, one that she recognized all too well. Well, yeah, I want to be a hero, like Almight and the others. I even want to be like who? Well, I would like to be a hero like Batman. A hero like Batman? I hear he was just a myth. No, he was an amazing hero. He retired almost 7 years ago. But even still, I think though, many people say he was quirkless. He was quirkless? Would you really believe such a thing? He was in the top 3 of Japan's finest heroes before he retired. Do you really think that someone quirkless could be that high? I don't see why not. He was known as the world's greatest detective. He was always facing powerful foes, like the fights that he had with the likes of Killer Croc, or even going up against a being known as Clayface. He always was able to find a way to win. Even if he didn't have a quirk, he was able to be in the top 3. Personally, I don't see why he couldn't have been number 1 if he tried. That's a lot of praise, Izuku. But still, if what you say is true, and that he was quirkless, don't you think that he faced many challenges? After all, being quirkless is not something that can easily be overcome. There are many of those out there with much powerful quirks and abilities, many dangerous foes that you may have to face. Don't you think it would be wiser not to pursue a career, one that could jeopardize your life? Well, Izuku would say, looking down, it's not like it's something I haven't thought about. I mean, realistically speaking, what can you do without a quirk? Not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. At least that's what many people say. Even my friend Bakugo feels the same. Your friend? Yeah. He kind of bullies me a lot, but that was only when he got his quirk. I know a lot of people say that all men aren't created equal, And I would say between the quirk and the quirkless, that's all the more true. But I don't think a quirk should determine whether or not you do what's right. I mean, if that's the case, then what would even be the point? But there are still other avenues you could take. Even without a quirk, you could serve as a police officer or a fireman. You don't necessarily have to go into the hero work. I know, but why not? Who says that having a quirk or not having a quirk means that you can or can't be a hero? That you can't help save someone when needed? I don't really see the big difference. At least, not to me. As they continued on, an incident would occur not too far ahead of them. Carrie would stop the car as traffic had been backed up. Not too far ahead of them, there was a large building and an apartment complex that was on fire. Izuku and the others had looked on. It seemed as though the other emergency services and the heroes weren't going to be getting there anytime soon. Many were escaping out of the apartment complex, but there was a woman in particular. She was desperately trying to go back inside, although many wouldn't let her. She yelled out continuously that her child was inside. As Izuku stood out of the car watching as the fire continued to rage, hearing the woman's pleas for someone, for anyone to save her child, Izuku felt as though he couldn't ignore the cries. The agony of the woman yelling for someone to rescue her child. There were no heroes, no firefighters, no emergency workers. They were coming as fast as they could, but even still, there was no telling if they were going to make it in time, as the 3-story apartment building might be falling anytime soon. She yelled that her child was on the 2nd floor in the 8th room. Hearing this, Izuku looked around. He felt nervous, almost afraid. Could he really do something like this? Could he really take this chance? But finally, the cries got to a point where they could no longer be ignored, and Izuku went running. Bruce and Kelly would notice as Izuku went running past everyone. As he was shorter than the rest, he went undetected, eventually slipping the blockade as he ran inside of the apartment. "What the hell is that kid thinking?" Kelly would say. "If he doesn't get out of there, he's only going to get himself hurt." "Go and get him, Kelly," Bruce would say, as Kelly ducked into a dark alley, making sure she wouldn't be seen. Izuku, in the meanwhile, he went racing up the stairs that hadn't been affected by the flames. Amongst the thick smoke and the dark clouds all around him, Izuku made his way through, eventually finding the door to where the apartment was. Reaching to the 8th room, Izuku would try to press against the door, desperately trying to open it, although it seemed as though it were locked. As Izuku tried desperately to force it open, he knew that if he were going to do anything, he was going to have to break the door down. Thankfully, it was made out of wood, but it was bolted pretty hard. Izuku took a deep breath before yelling out in fury as he rammed his right shoulder into the door. He heard a snapping sound as the door eventually broke off of its hinge, just enough to open. Izuku's right arm was limp, and he could feel a pain shooting up it. He might have popped his shoulder out of place. That couldn't be good. Even still, Izuku wasn't too worried about the pain. The only thing he cared about was saving that child. As Izuku ran through the apartment, he would look out to see if there was anyone in there. As he arrived to a room, he could hear whimpering. The smoke and the flames were starting to come around them, As he opened the door, he saw a young boy hiding under his bed. Hey, are you alright? I want my mommy. I know. Your mom's just outside. I can take you to her. But I'm scared. It'll be okay, I promise. Just, please. Izuku would reach out his hand towards the boy. His left hand was shaking. He was fearful. He was afraid for his and the boy's life. But even still, he carried on with a smile on his face. The young boy reached out his hand for Izuku's. As Izuku took it, he would carry the boy in his left arm, telling him to hold on tight as Izuku quickly raced out of the building. As he made it back into the halls, it was much darker than he could have imagined. Izuku raced down the halls as fast as he could, hoping to find the stairwell. But when he did, he could see that the flames had now reached the stairs, and he couldn't escape the same way he came. As Izuku turned back down the hall, he went hoping to find if there would be another case of stairs. Even though there was, they too were unfortunately caught by the flames. With no choice, Izuku would reach out to the window. He was able to open it, carrying the boy still. The crowd would look on and see Izuku carrying the young boy. Izuku could see that he was about 2 stories high, around 12 feet in the air. If he made the jump now, at worst, he might break or shatter his legs, but he could survive the fall. There was a tree next to the apartment. It was about 5 feet away from the window. If Izuku could make the jump, they could get to the tree. The crowd was yelling, trying to cheer Izuku on, but at the same time they were worried for his safety. A few other people would arrive soon after, getting underneath them, telling Izuku to jump. Izuku would do just so. However, as he attempted to make the jump, his foot would slip, causing him and the boy to start to fall out. However, at the last moment, a being would come swooping in, saving them at the last moment and helping them get to the ground. You alright, kid? Yes, we're fine. Who are you? Named Sparrow. The hero would fly back into the apartment. Thankfully, no one else was in there, and Izuku had managed to save the young boy. As the other emergency services would finally arrive, those who were injured would be taken to the hospital. Izuku was taken in, where his shoulder would be popped back into place and he would be given medication. Of course, heroes and other emergency service workers would start to chew him out profusely for doing something so stupid. Izuku knew this was coming and he accepted it. His mother arrived not too long after to make sure he was okay. And someone else was there as well. As Bruce watched on, he made sure that everyone's medical expenses would be cared for, and he would see to it that those who had lost their home would find a new one. As he left, he kept thinking about Izuku, about what he had done. In the end, he couldn't help but feel this overwhelming sense, this feeling, like that boy could do something special someday. But even still, he wondered if it was worth it. Could he really do it one more time? As he and Kelly made their way home, Kelly would look at Bruce as he made his way inside. "I know what you're thinking," she would say. "Oh, you do?" "I do. And the answer is no." and you seem to know me so well. Bruce, I know you want to help people. You've helped all of us, but don't you think that maybe it would be dangerous for you to do so with this kid? I'm serious. You saw what he just did. That was reckless. It was dangerous. It was no different than what we would have done. Bruce, that was different. How so? I don't see really real difference between you and him. It's just, I feel like there are special exceptions. But even still, I don't really think that there's any way of someone who's quirkless doing what we used to do. At least back in the day, quirks were manageable. But you've heard about the quirk singularity. I have. As generations pass, quirks are getting stronger and stronger day by day. I've seen it when I'm out in the fields. There are villains, even low-ranking ones, who can do things that would make even our old foes quake. I just don't think it would be safe. And even still, you saw it, didn't you? That look in his eyes. That determination. I don't think it's something that can be easily ignored. Even Kelly couldn't help but empathize with Bruce. It was a look that they all had. If the Bat family was famous for anything, it was overcoming the odds. The fact that heroes who were quirkless could have as much of an impact as they did, it was nothing short of a miracle. But even still, it had been so long. To add someone new to the ranks of the Bat family, could that even be possible? Bruce would think it over for some time. He wondered, was it really time for him to pass it on? Was this the person? The one? Of course, there had been others, but taking the mantle was something that none of them wanted to do. Dick was happy being Nightwing. Barbara, she had retired long ago. Kelly, she chose to be the Sparrow. Tim, he served as the Red Robin, but he retired not too long after himself. No one had taken the role of the Batman, but even still, in Bruce's mind and in his heart, the Batman was something that was needed. If Almight was going to be passing down his mantle before long, Bruce felt he should do the same. And seeing this individual here, he felt as though he might have found someone who was worthy. About 2 months would pass following that incident. Izuku's shoulder would have recovered, and for the most part, he felt alright with himself. Of course, he still had to deal with his struggles of being quirkless, and those who bullied him for it. But one day, as he was walking out of school, he would see a familiar face. It was Carrie. She would wave over to him, telling him to follow her. As he walked over to the car, she said that there was someone who wanted to see him. Izuku asked if it was Bruce by any chance, and Carrie said that it was someone else, and that it was very important. Izuku was a bit nervous about this, but still, he trusted her well enough as he entered into the side passenger seat of the car. As the two of them began to drive and make their way, at that very moment, when Izuku wasn't paying attention, Carrie would spray a gas in his face, causing him to fall unconscious. The next thing Izuku knew, he would find himself awakening in a dark place. He was in a room with a spotlight under him. As he awoken after rising from off the floor, he tried to see where he was, but in every area around him, it was nothing but pitch black, absolute darkness. The only light was the one that was over his head. Where am I? How did I get here? Izuku Midoriya. Who said that? Do you want to be a hero? Do I answer the question? Yes, I want to be a hero. More than anything. Are you willing to do whatever it takes? Even if you are quirkless? I don't answer so lightly. Your answer, it could change everything. Your world could change in many ways than one. But this will only be your one chance. If you choose to go down this road, I can help you. I can give you the tools, the training that you need to make you the finest hero this world has ever seen. However, if you decline, then it ends. You will never be given this chance. You will go back to your life being the way it was, and whatever you do from there, it's on you. Do you understand? I do. And I want to be a hero. If you really can help me, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll take the training. I'll face the hardships. There's nothing I won't do. I see. And is this your final answer? It is. Good. The light would disappear from over Izuku, and he would be left in the darkness. But only for a brief moment, because a different light would form. A large computer screen, vehicles, an assortment of suits, and everything else would all appear before him. And standing above, sitting in a long chair, would be none other than Bruce Wayne. Nice to see you again, Izuku Midoriya. Mr. Wayne, where am I? Where is... This is the Batcave. The Batcave? Yes, it's my base. Izuku Midoriya, you have found the Batman. The symbol of the Batman would appear on the screen. Izuku couldn't believe where he was, nor could he believe that he had actually found what he was looking for. This was the base of the Batman. Bruce Wayne was Batman. Izuku couldn't contain his excitement. This was more than anything he could have ever imagined. But yet even still at the same time, this almost made all the sense in the world. Too much sense. Izuku started asking a lot of questions. He started rambling amongst himself in endless dialogue, to the point where Bruce had to eventually stop him and snap him back into reality to make sure that he would be aware of what was going on. Izuku, pay attention. Oh, right, yes sir. Izuku, I am quirkless. So, if anything, I believe that you have the chance, the opportunity to inherit my will. and I believe you are the one who will become the next Batman and will serve in my place. Me? Be the next Batman? Is that even possible? I am living proof that it can be done. However, if you are going to serve in my place, then I require 3 things from you. 1, you give me 100%. 2, you give me more than 100%. And 3, I make the rules. Is that understood? Izuku would nod, knowing that in all likelihood, this was his only chance, his only opportunity to become a hero. Up until a few moments ago, realistically he didn't have one, but now he did. But this wasn't going to be easy. Izuku had 2 years before the UA High entrance exams. Now, under normal circumstances, many would believe that Izuku would be at a disadvantage. Only 2 years worth of training? However, you have to keep in mind the legacy of Batman. The first Robin, canonically speaking, was only 8 years old when he took the mantle, and we've seen the type of career that he went on to have. And other Robins that came not too long after were around this age, give or take, when they started their career. But given the current laws of their world, Izuku wouldn't be allowed to go out on patrol. After all, without a license, that would be in violation of the law. So Izuku would have 2 years to train, to hone his skills, and to be as prepared as he could be for the life ahead. Izuku's training for the next 2.5 years would consist of the following: bodybuilding and conditioning. This was to help Bruce get his body in the peak condition, helping Izuku to learn how to hone and master various forms of martial arts, to make sure that he was in the peak of the human prime. Being that he didn't have a quirk, he would have to rely on his natural skills and his quick wits. Amongst his other skills and training, there would be gymnastics, much to Izuku's embarrassment, as there were a few times he was mocked and ridiculed when the other boys in class saw that he was carrying ballet shoes. But even this training had a purpose. The training was to make Izuku a lot more flexible, a lot more agile. After all, the first Robin, Dick Grayson, was an acrobatic, and that played greatly into his skills and in his training. But there was another aspect of training that Izuku had to undergo, and that was something known as Quirk Psychology 101. What is Quirk Psychology, you might ask? It's learning how to assess a quirk and learning the best ways to combat it. You see, what many people tend to forget with the Batman is that he fought against many powerful metahumans in his day, many of whom were quirk users, and there were many adversaries who didn't have a quirk who were also just as skilled. More often than not, your average quirk wasn't as powerful as you might think it was. In fact, a lot of times they could be considered average at best. The true essence of a quirk wasn't the overall power of the quirk, but how someone used it. Someone with an invisibility quirk could be just as deadly as someone who could create nuclear explosions. It was all about how the quirk was used and perceived, and this was something that Izuku had to understand when going up against various criminals. Many criminals would try to use their quirk as a way to scare you, to frighten you, to try to overwhelm you. The job of Quirk Psychology was to not get overwhelmed, to not flinch in the face of adversity, That way, Izuku was able to overcome and be given the edge. He also learned many skills when it came to detective work and deduction, learning how to truly see into a situation. Oftentimes, when it came to the work of a hero, it wasn't just about defeating the bad guy and saving the day. There were such things as trying to find where a criminal was hiding, or trying to find someone who had been kidnapped or had gone missing. And a lot of times, being able to deduce the simplest of clues could mean the difference between life or death, or between capture or escape. To say that this work was draining on Izuku would be an understatement. He had to put his all into his training, and he wasn't allowed to lax. No, if anything, Izuku had to put more than the average attention into his training, to make sure that he was prepared at all times. But this would yield surprising results. And in 2.5 years' time, Izuku would have found himself in a much different state than he was at the start. Even life for him at school had changed. His bullies no longer bothered him, as he was finally able to fend them off. Even Bakugo had to give him begrudging respect. Even without a quirk, Izuku was actually able to challenge him. The few times the two of them had actually sparred against one another, Izuku was able to hold his own against Bakugo. This also played into the fact that Izuku studied people very attentively, which was something that Bruce was able to nurture. The fact that Izuku was able to pay attention to how Bakugo fought made studying all the more important. Izuku studied many different fighting styles, but also how different people fought. Izuku was able to tell how people with a fire quirk would fight, or those who used explosives, compared to those who used different other elemental quirks. It was the little things that really added to Izuku's repertoire, and this was made more evident than on the final day of school. The teacher had announced that 2 of their students were going to be applying to UA for the Hero course, that being in Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya. After school had ended, Bakugo would ask Izuku if he wanted to hang out at the arcade, but Izuku couldn't, since he had some training to do. As he was making his way home, he was walking under a bridge, when suddenly, from out of the sewers, a Sludge Villain would attack. However, instead of being caught off guard, Izuku would flip and move out of the way of the Sludge Villain. The villain was attempting to take over Izuku's body, but Izuku was able to dodge the Sludge Villain many of occasions. Grabbing a trash can lid, he used it as a shield to block against the villain, before eventually trying to lure it to a location where he could gain the advantage. As he had found a larger trash bin, he had attempted to open the lid before moving around like a matador, guiding the Sludge Villain like it was a bull. Before long, Izuku's main plan was to trap it inside of the bin, and hopefully keep it contained. But unknown to Izuku, someone had actually been watching from the distance, that being the hero All Might. As All Might had watched how young Izuku was able to dodge many of the attacks of the Sludge Villain, he was able to recognize all too well that type of fighting. All Might would still come in and save Izuku, as he had done in the original story. However, he had to praise the boy for his skills. He even asked if he had a quirk and that he just wasn't using it because of the law. But Izuku explained that he was quirkless. All the same, this left All Might even more impressed. Before leaving though, Izuku, getting a chance to meet his hero, he would ask him if it were possible for him to become a hero, even if he didn't have a quirk. Under normal circumstances, All Might would have said no. he would have said that it was impossible. But All Might knew firsthand that that wasn't the case. And if this boy, if he had gotten training from who he thought he had, he might just be the finest hero this world had ever seen. All Might told young Izuku that he indeed could become a great hero, because he had seen it firsthand. As he left, before long Toshinori would get into contact with Bruce, asking about the young boy whom he had met. Toshinori would warn Bruce to be careful. After all, he knew how Bruce got his start as a hero, and even though he was able to be acquitted, the last thing they wanted was to encourage vigilantism. Bruce made it very clear that he wasn't going to be doing any such things with Izuku, and that Izuku had been warned many times not to get involved in any hero business, and that he was strictly only to undergo training. This was just to make sure that Izuku had the best shot at getting into UA, giving him the best opportunity to stand against those who would be above him in terms of raw power. Taking him at his word, Toshinori would accept this, and would leave him to continue his training of Izuku. With middle school now out of the way, there was only 10 months until the UA entrance exams. With 10 free months, Izuku's training intensified. He had soon become learned in many martial arts disciplines, as well as learning how to use many other various weapons. His skills in academics, as well as being more tech-savvy, had definitely come into play. And before long, Izuku had shown much growth than he had at the start. But now, the final test was upon him. As the day of the exam had finally come to pass, Bruce, along with Carrie, would drop Izuku off at UA High. As Izuku exited the car, he turned back to Bruce as he smiled, thanking him for everything. But Bruce wasn't smiling, because there was no need to thank him just yet. Bruce would give Izuku only one saying: "If you fail to get in, Izuku, we're done." We're done? We're done. If you can't get into UA with what I've taught you, then your journey as a hero, it ends here. Izuku would nod in understanding. Even though Bruce was helping him, he had made it very clear that this was a serious matter, and not something that could be taken lightly. For Izuku, this was all or nothing. There was no going back from here on out. In order for Izuku to continue to have the support, he had to show he was worthy of it. He had to show that he was worthy of taking the mantle. And this was his start. This is the beginning. The story of Izuku Midoriya, of the boy who would become the world's greatest hero, and who would take the mantle of the Dark Knight. This is the story of Batman. This concludes What If Deku Was Batman? My Hero Academia, The Dark Knight Returns. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we start our 4th new series, Neon Genesis Evangelion Redemption, Book 1, What If Shinji Went Back in Time? But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.